just never fails to surprise me how, when it's something really important that I feel I must talk about, that something happens in the electronic world that doesn't, that seems to thwart it. I'm not saying it's anything bizarre. I'm just saying it's something that I cross over. I think it's more because I'm so dimensionalized that I can't, my reading specifics and my understanding what specific things are happening is not so not so easy, and so it's a very um, it's a very important conversation today, and I have two videos behind me on purpose, and the two images behind me on purpose because I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about something biologically first. I'm going to talk about glial cells, and glial cells are something that communicates. Good morning, Michelle. Sorry, I'm late. I got very confused about trying to do something up leveling how I do these recordings. So there we are. So the first thing I want to address is glial cells, and I'm not going to go into it. You can read about them, GLIA. But they're kind of a beingness, kind of a biological beingness. And that biological beingness communicates with the whole body and with the brain. And the body and brain I'm talking about differently uh, because we're talking about the body below the neck and we're talking about the brain above the neck and everything that connects hither and yon. So we're moving into an era where there's going to be a real challenge for human beings who think they're the only living being on the planet. And about 2 weeks ago, I had an activation. Sorry, I'm really deep in a netherworldliness, and it's hard for me to look at the screen and stay where I am. So if you don't mind, I'll just sort of look down for a minute. But it was a very significant thing that happened. And I realized that people pretty much just passed it by, like another high or another paranormal something or another. Um, it didn't interrupt their day. And it should have interrupted their day. And I don't mean anything's wrong that it didn't interrupt people's day. I just mean it points to something fundamentally missing in the human anatomy of consciousness. And so I wanted to take today to talk through that. We assume that everything that we're experiencing is the sum total of our experience. And yet every day we walk around with ants on the ground and birds up in the sky, but for a human being, they've been encapsulated in a consciousness, almost like a sack that doesn't that is always referencing themselves. The part that makes it hard for me at this time, in a way, is kind of a very beautiful thing because I was shown and live in the mind of these times where the earth, um, if you want to have her be inanimate, is going back to her baseline and rebuilding from the ground up. And for any of you who've ever had a system collapse, biological system collapse, the only way back is to go back to a baseline and build back up. Well, what is that baseline? And I just want to let you know these little glia cells in your body are the information carriers that are distinct from human thinking. They're primordial. They inform you of your primordial body. Because it is a primordial body. It's made of this planet. I know it's also made of stardust. But the important part is it's a communication system that goes through the brain and other parts of the body, delivering connected information. But the human personality doesn't function that way. The human personality is incarcerated in circumstance and in thinking inside their bubble. The very short human life we have, very, very short, is all about our circumstances or world events or who's doing what to whom or are we going to make it. We have a very crowded mind. And the problem is that it's the part of our being that is the nervous system of our planet and of our self, capital S. So the last 8 years I have spent really doing what I set up to do as a possibility to restore what we call the sentient intelligence and the empathic response in human beings. Mostly human beings think of empathic response as picking up on the fears and pain of others. How sad. How sad. And even if we burst out laughing for no reason or are standing by the ocean and are filled with tears, we don't register it as an empathic response, a response of being one with all creation. We register it as a human being having an experience by that thing out there, in connection with that thing out there. So I'm actually using this Facebook Live to record this memo between the cellular nervous system of a human being and the nervous system of our planet. One of the things that increases the strength of these little glia cells, or neurons, whatever they're called, is actually our imagination. Do you know that imagination calms, not imagination fight or flight, screw it or kill it, or fear of future, but I mean a real imagination. That's why myth was so important, because myth, stories of connection that hadn't, where the players in those stories had not been objectified into something inanimate and dead. But I'm really talking about that animate reality that we swim in, that's rising. And there is a gap there is a gap between our perceptive capacity and what's going on. And I would like us to try to close it. And I don't know how. I know that I did the first full Your Emergent Self last week, and it still stuns me, the fact it's right below the surface. It's not hidden. You're actually quite cellularly active. Your neurons and your nervous system are quite active. But the stopper is the translator of the brain that is always a human being having a human experience. So what happened? What did that Wednesday of that activation, what did it point to? And is it possible, if I share what it pointed to, that we can increase its value? And that we might even be able to start having perceptive registers for the reboot, the reset. I'm not sure it's a reset, it's definitely a reboot. But the building back from the core consciousness of this planet, what she's doing. And the interesting thing is it's in people like me, people that kind of never lost that neurological activity. Maybe in the discussing of it and in our shared field of resonance, it can trigger your glia cells, your neurons, your nervous system, because the nervous system, that's why the solar plexus is so important. And I think a couple of ways that we could take it on is one, to really observe, because observation really can be very impactful in regulating our consciousness. Usually before one has a breakthrough in consciousness, the mind gets incredibly busy about everything, from the fork that went into the disposal, to the garbage that hasn't been taken out, to needing to get your nails painted. It becomes very identity-centric because it's disturbed. It's shifting from human circumstance identification into an emergent self. And it is an emergent self. It's actually a self that exists, that is now just right below the surface of every one of you. And I mean, I just barely tapped it in your emergent self, and it just rose. It was just looking for a place. Thank you, Praline. But we have to remember that the triggers in our audient and visual centers is to look for soothing ourselves, protecting ourselves, or directing ourselves. So it actually takes stopping and tuning into the earth, as if being a bogus word here, as if you are your nervous system and you are the glia cells or the glia neurons. Somebody write down the right phraseology, please. So that you can build back this communication And I want to tell you why it's so important. It's not just a silly exercise in becoming an awakened being. It really has to do with knowing to leave town when an earthquake's coming. It really has to do with feeling the pulse of the earth. And feel, that's what Noah did. Noah felt the pulse of the earth. And he had a masculine god, God, that told him that he needed to build an ark, put the duality in the ark, and because the mother was going to flood the planet. Hi. Hello. You really need to listen to me. I just don't think you have time not to. So what was so significant about that activation, which turned into an event, was there's this layering. And this layering is very important in how we receive it. And we mostly think our solar plexus is simply to warn us if we're being driven over by a bus or if someone's going to harm us. But actually the solar plexus is like a sun. They're like a sun that radiates out, and the nervous system gathers information not just from your biological system. And by the way, why are we ill? Why are we not vital? How come I can build back? How come I can build back? You all have watched me for years. Where do you think I'm looking? My body is not separate from the planet, and the planet is not separate from the cosmos. We read a chapter that Electra Porzel wrote in the Mind of Creation book. And I really want to just cry through the whole thing because she nailed it. How the ancients knew our nervous system was planetary, cosmological, and imagine that we thought that way. And that we thought that way 80% of the time, and 20% of the time we thought about our to-do list. Imagine. I would really like if you took on what I'm about to ask. Week to week to week, we pay attention to these things. And by the way, I was trying to schedule ahead, and I scheduled it for tomorrow, not for today. So I'm gonna have to take the event down. Wondered why it wasn't going live. So let's look at last Wednesday, or Wednesday 2 weeks ago, and you don't have to have been there. 3 things happened. One was that an activation had been scheduled about dragon like an animated consciousness that we created a mythic image of, multiple images of, basically to hold the space, to give dragon a place. The very same time, there are fires everywhere. And through really a strange event, an half hour, an hour before the event, I got a video of a fire where I used to live. Someone had videoed it, which gave me direct contact with it. So this is all happening before this activation about restoring part of our glia memory. I'm serious. And all of a sudden, a fire in Grass Valley threatening people, not threatening, but encroaching on people that I had a direct relationship with. The fact we were in the energy of the fire and the realm of the dragon. So if you can, let's see if I can figure out which way to go. I think I go up the other way. So if you can look at this, I really want you to look at it. It's a print by Alex Gray. You're looking at yourself. We should be bonding with the fire element right now. Because it's like a layering. First, there's the primordial fire of the inner earth. You could say, I wish there was a way for me to language that God has passed storytelling into reality. But if you can imagine that a consciousness rose out of that primordial belly, heart of the mother, the solar plexus of the mother that engages with the sun. She's inside of our planet is a sun, a fire element. And as this thing that we're part of called consciousness began to evolve, we have the primordial forces, fire, water, air, earth, metal. And then human beings began to come into existence. And there needed to be an interactive, interrelated activity between the planet and her kind, which is more like the elementals, the primordial forces. But certain creatures came into existence really to protect this young species. I promise, I have memory. 2 we know of, there are others, but 2 that are fundamental right now. One is dragon, the other is unicorn. So just look at this picture for a moment. Hold on, I'm gonna move my... Just realized I pulled out my headset. Like I said, it's one of those days. And just look at this for a moment. Look at that. That's you. That's you with your radiating solar plexus. The sun in the earth, the sun in your torso, the sun in the sky. And it's through the sentience that is given by our planet and by the cosmos. The sentience has language, but it doesn't have spoken language. It doesn't have circumstantial language. It has sentience. And how human beings connected with that sentience is through what we now call myth or story. Dragon. But it's important to know it's a consciousness. It might be worth it to go look at some of the movies that were out, especially the one that I think had three separate movies attached to it. That was the imaginative world giving rise to a part of our consciousness that lives in the glia intelligence of our system. I never knew its name. Other people find the names of things. For me, I just can feel an animated existence that my intelligence is living in. So it's really important that we maybe think about or or ponder on this trinity of the belly or the heart or the sun of the inner earth, our solar plexus sun, and the sun in our solar system. And that we honor, just like Oriental traditions do, that have the best healing methods on the planet, that we honor dragon. You know, the intelligence of consciousness isn't about figuring out how to use something. I see you, Gail. The intelligence of the planet. Lisa, would you or someone post a link to getting our hands on that? I'd love that on here. The point is we have to restore our relationship as if we have one with dragon. And yes, this month I'm going to access the domain of unicorn. It's going to be amazing what shows up about that. Have a meteor shower or something. Because as the human system fails, because it isn't lined up with the primordial system, the original nature, the original design here, us being able to let a part of our consciousness dwell in being, there's no terminology that satisfies the human mind. You know, give me answers, show me how, tell me how, protect me, which is actually pretty decent in the dragon world. It's not a thing out there. We're out here with it now. And it's out here with us. I was thinking about Lily today. I had taken her to the doctor. I knew something was wrong. I assumed it was her heart. And it turned out she was bleeding out. She had a tumor on her spleen and it was bleeding out. It was so decisive. There was no way around it. She was going to die, and she did. But the timing was impeccable because she's an animate being, and an animate being that works in unity with the whole system response of this living consciousness that we're part of. And a series of events happened that had me end up back in New Mexico. Just in time. Thank you, Lisa. Just in time. I think that it's important that it stays private. This sharing here is fine, but stays private. Because even as I say it, listen, just think dragon. See where feel your gut. It'll hit your gut. The fire in the belly. And this is the kind of intelligence that the mother gave us when we first started to exist here. This ability to have visions, imaginations, sensations, where we could actually, and of course the Orientals do it much more astrologically and much more in healing systems, track the path of the dragon and to follow its path. Imagine. This morning I woke up and I thought, wow, how am I going to do this? I'll tell you what it is in a minute. I thought, I got to find out about this. Probably homeopathically, um, probably I'm going to look into essences. I'm going to go talk to this incredible herb shop here. But why aren't we balancing our systems with fire, the fire element? Why aren't, I'm not saying this to you, this is my quizzery this morning. Why am I not balancing my body with the fire? If fire's up, if fire, water is the first transmutational system that we know about as human beings, where humanity got to start again. And by the way, in case you don't know it, humanity's about to get to start again. Why wouldn't I be lining up? Noah built an ark. How do I line up with fire in my body? How do I tune it to it? Not just, well, just not being a fair word. Not only because I do think human beings want to return to the original nature, their original design, which is being one with all creation and having what can take care of us that goes out beyond the human system that can't take care of us anymore. It's collapsing. It can take care of us in a short term, but to fundamentally move with the earth right now, to fundamentally be part of her greater design, that's very different. That means all sorts of things can go on at the level of humanity. We have a lot of rage going on. That's the fire element. Hate, fire element, in a human being, uncontrolled, unharnessed, at the effect of, not in the passion, the excitement, the joy, the freedom of fire. Fire is a freedom element. This weekend I'm hoping to go out to the volcanoes because I need to do a new activation. And even that, if you can think in the deeper nature of your own intelligence, is remarkable. Because in that activation, what rose was this layeredness of time between the primordial time of fire, the dragon time, the activate human time. It all came together to make something visible, to create a relational field. And we get to further that relational field. It will reveal itself to us. And we need it, frankly, to feel whole. Because what we've known ourselves to be as human beings isn't going to be enough much longer, if now. We have to know ourselves as the primordial mother's child. We have to know ourselves as fire. We have to know ourselves as water. We have to know ourselves as earth. We have to know ourselves as metal. To know ourselves as air. I want to show you the other picture. There we go. So the beautiful thing about these two pictures by Alex Gray, there's also another one which is hanging on Heather Hunt's wall in her craniosacral treatment room. I'm going to order another one. But when we bring these two systems together, the primordial system and the cosmic system, we have us. we have you, and we have me. And we're looking at the nervous system of the cosmos coming into the body and the chakra system. And then we have the nervous system of the earth coming into the body through the solar plexus. Fire in the belly. What would it be like for you to spend at least 5 minutes every day considering yourself that way? Because even if you use your imagination, and even if you're just playing around with it, just giving it your attention, that's what awareness is. Awareness is giving it your attention. But those lovely little glia cells restore memory in our nervous system, in our brain, etc. So imagine that we're in a moment of time that's bringing all of time together. I'm very excited now about doing the unicorn activation. I'm just told what to do. I hear it in my consciousness. And lately I've just been stunned when the activation shows up, because I didn't have any idea what was going on till I go into the system of so above, so below, and it's just very perceptive there, let's put it that way, for me. On behalf of all life, on behalf of the original nature, the original design of a human form, and its beingness. So just for a minute with me, imagine that we're looking at a unfolding of time. Let's assume that the intelligence of the mother, the planet Earth, ignited, activated, as Yvonne said, through fire. And as it ignited and activated, it began to bring life here. Warmed her up so things could come into existence. And then combinations of minerals and molecules and atoms and all sorts of things began to create consciousness. Fire being obviously, earth being the first element, or actually earth and fire the first element. Fire and earth work together. Then air and water. And then other consciousnesses began to spring forth. Rocks and trees, all sorts of things. There's something in the writing, I hope I run across it again, because we're in the Metabody writing right now. It's in the chapter Electra did, but it said a little deeper in this other thing, that we all carry the same animals, and all living creatures we all have a similar fundamental nervous system. So even our biology is collectively connected to the nervous system of the mother, made from fire, water, earth, air, into a vibrational system. And then this thing happened. This creature got born. We assume that it came as a combination from the cosmos and the planet. It's like that's why the religion is about the Mother and Father God. But go deeper. And out of that, there seemed to be an ignorance, a connection. But we were so frail. We were different. And so creatures came into existence to help us, protect us, take care of us, probably for more than we realize. But I do know we were precious to this planet and to the cosmos. I do know that, because it's why I keep coming back. I've never really felt human until this time. And this time I love what a human being is, not because of my circumstances or my body or anything, because I've gotten the awesome opportunity for almost 60 years to be sitting every month in the consciousness of another human being. It's not too hard to figure out. So everything's coming back together now, these relational fields. And two really important ones, it's not fantasy, it's reality, are the dragon element, an element not being the same word as elementals, although it is an elemental, primordial elemental. But I don't want it watered down. It's a consciousness, it's a fire consciousness that has an activity of protection. The unicorn protects the cosmos, protects its horn of light, literally flies around this planet, or maybe even the solar system, protecting it. The dragon protects the primordial nature of the mother and her species called human being. But to get into the consciousness of the planet and to give ourselves time through our imaginary realm, through our awakening spirit, through our emergent self, I cannot tell you how important it is for our being here, actively participating as the existence of life itself in the next 6 years. There's so much more I'm aware of. For me, it's very comforting. It's very relaxing. It's very soothing to feel her activity and to feel the activity of her invisible children operating on behalf of her existence and helping her keep the elements of a human being in her nervous system. Just had this thought, Electra, we need to restructure the perception of the nervous system, because the nervous system is the most important thing we have. It's our unity with everything. The chapter that Electra just did was about the flow, about how our systems, the earth and our bodies, how they keep us in balance. They keep balancing what's life depleting and life enhancing, so that we stay present and here. But I'm very serious about this. How many of you have had a meeting or have had a crisis of someone you love or someone died? How many of you have checked in with the mother? Not asked for help, but checked in, shared consciousness. How many of you have called on the dragon of fire energy, fire power is needed? I just say that so we can really see that something is deeply missing in our everyday consciousness. It never occurs to us to call on that which goes outside the system of human being. And before human being ever was even a molecular possibility. So that's you behind me. This is when I missed my room because it was all set up for visuals. And I don't have that here. I will work it out though. I have an artist in my pocket, uh, Tanner. I'll talk to him about getting big boards so I can create an environment here so that we can have visuals that really serve us, because it's so hard on our mind not to be served. Just don't keep the dragon and unicorn out there. Be out here with them. And let them be out here with you. I love you. I always have. It's why I come back. I find being a human being a frightening thing. But we're all in it together. And there's so much we can do now. There's so much possible now. Our glia memory, which I'm going to ask Electra to put a link to her first Facebook page or the Institute's Facebook page, and see if we can't really get you all actively aware of the glia cells in such a manner that you can be served by them and you can stimulate their intelligence. And you know, love is the fire of the intimacy of a human being. The nervous system is the fire of the non-physical nature, the empathy of a